Stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now, huh?
Thanks, Jerry, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the studio headquarters of Chicagoland's most watched, most talked about Access television series. I'm Samantha Bentley, and this is the 1102nd edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Today, we conclude our motorcycle road trip to Eastern Kentucky. If you'll recall, in Part 1, we traveled from the Chicago O'Hare Airport area to Kokomo, Indiana, en route to the G-Man Rally in Slade, Kentucky. In Part 2, we traveled from Kokomo to Slade, 505 miles in 2 days to attend a rally for the Suzuki GSX 1100G motorcycle, thus G-Men. In Part 3, we completed our participation in the rally and began our trip back to Chicago. We got as far as the Ohio River bordering Kentucky and Indiana. Let's begin Part 4 by joining Bill and Mae as they cross the Ohio River and re-enter Indiana en route to Sweet Home Chicago.
There's the Indiana state line, as Jim Neighbors would say, back home again in Indiana. Again, we're following 421 North. Really have to pay attention in these small towns. Some of these roads, again, we're used to interstates and we're not used to the twists and turns. It's really easy to forget about paying attention to the signs, and you got to watch the signs continuously. Shooting into the sun, you probably can't see it, showing 421 North to the right. Very easy to miss the sign. You got to be really heads up on this. Again, those of us, we've become very used to the interstates. welcome sign.
About this time that Bill started thinking about riding all the way back to Chicago in one day. Hi, I'm Janine Lauschat. Bill was reasoning it's only about 505 miles from Slade, Kentucky to Chicago, and many bikers do 5, 6, and even 700-mile days. They were making good time as they continued north on 421. He hadn't said anything to Mae about the possible change of plans. He figured he wouldn't have to make a decision about it until they were going around Indianapolis, when he would have to decide whether he was going to take Route 31 north or I-65 north. They continued north on 421 until they got to I-74, where they turned northwest until they got to I-465. As they worked their way around Indianapolis, the idea of going all the way seemed feasible. They stopped to eat and fuel up. Bill mentioned his thoughts to Mae, and she said, "Why not?" So instead of taking Route 31, they picked up I-65 and headed north with the speed of the interstate offers. Unfortunately, somewhere in the Lafayette, Indiana area, the fine weather they had been enjoying turned sour. A cold wind had suddenly blown in, accompanied by an incredible lightning show that lit up the night sky. There isn't much cover to find on I-65. It's pretty much flat and wide open, so they soldiered on into the dark of night with lightning flashing and the cold wind signaling the possibility of a violent storm. Bill found it somewhat disconcerting that there didn't seem to be any other traffic, like they knew something he didn't. Still, it was past midnight, and that might account for the empty highway, Bill reasoned to himself. Approaching the Remington, Indiana area, the rain hit with a vengeance. It was getting scary now, and Bill knew it was time to call it a day. He spotted a motel sign in the distance and made a run for it. The next day, Bill and Mae couldn't believe the change in weather, as though nothing they experienced the night before had actually happened.
Boy, what a difference a day makes, or really not just a day, just a few hours, right, Mae?
Less than 12 hours.
It's absolutely beautiful right now, isn't it?
Beautiful, gorgeous.
It's like a gorgeous, beautiful day, but it wasn't a gorgeous, beautiful day last night.
Not even close.
Not even close. Let me tell you the story. We went through, like every motorcycle road trip adventure, eventually, one way or another, it turns into an adventure. And the adventure really got to be an adventure last night as plans changed several times. As you know, we've talked about this on the show before, I like to think that about 300 miles is a good plan for a day's ride on a motorcycle. You're comfortable, you're not worn out, you get to see the sights and the scenery and all the rest of it. So I like to do about 300 miles a day. When we calculated how far it had been from Chicago going down to that natural bridge in Slade, Kentucky, it came out about 510 miles. Something like 5.5, 5.7, 510 is close enough, about 510 miles. And I said, gee, 510 miles, most real bikers can do 500 miles in a day. But what the heck, I want to see the sights, and I particularly wanted to get back and enjoy that 421. Was that 421 in Kentucky beautiful or what?
Very beautiful, very scenic.
Very scenic, very pretty, and I don't mean for 5 minutes. It went on for hours.
Hours and hours.
Yeah, it was just a delight. I highly recommend 421, and the way you do it, the best way to do it, is to start by picking up 421 right at the Kentucky and Indiana border, and continuing south, because it gets better and better and better and better right until it ends in Frankfort, Kentucky. Frankfort is the capital of Kentucky. It all comes to a screeching halt right there, but it's about 2.5, 3 hours of just the best kind of riding. Anyway. So on the way back, I wanted to make sure we got some of that, which we did, and I was very pleased about all that. And we didn't leave that Slade, Kentucky, that Natural Bridge area. We didn't, Little Admiral Motel, I should say. We didn't really leave there until about 2:30. About 2:30.
Correct.
About 2:30 in the afternoon. So we're doing a leisurely pace, but we ended up, and we stopped and shot pieces along the way. We're doing so well that we got into the Indianapolis area about, what do you think, 8:30 or so? Something
Around
like
that time.
Around 8:30 or so. And I'm fueling up, I'm looking at the map, I'm saying, and it's getting dark. And my theory on this is that, I don't like the interstates normally, but I don't think they're without value. They do have value. And I don't like the secondary highway system at night because they don't have fences along the sides of the road to keep the animals out and all that. And there's two reasons for my concern there. Number one, on a motorcycle, it can be fatal if you hit an animal. Number two, I'm a huge animal lover, and I sure don't want to hurt an animal either. So it's a two-sided thing. I obviously don't want to have an accident, but I sure don't want to hurt an animal either. And they got as much right to the property as I do. So it means you have to really reduce your speed a lot. So at night, I prefer to jump on the interstate. It's too dark. You can't see those nice sights anyway. And the interstates are really set up for traveling that. So I said, you know what, May? If we jump on I-65 instead of 31, 31 would have taken us back through Kokomo again. It was a very nice ride. But maybe the trip is over. Maybe we just continue up I-65. We can make some real good time on it, and we'll go home. We'll do it all in one day and see what these guys are talking about with their 700 miles in one day and 600 miles in one day. We'll do a 510 in one day. That was the new plan, right?
Yes.
What happened?
Didn't go.
It didn't go because somewhere, I would say perhaps, I'm trying to think, not Lafayette, somewhere in the Lafayette, Indiana area, all of a sudden the weather seemed to change. We could feel the cold wind, right? And it's sort of knocking us around. You're really out in the open on I-65. It's knocking us around on the motorcycle. And by the way, we're going to talk more about that. This GSX 1100G once again proved why 15 years after they stopped producing them, there's such a strong following for these things, why people like them. What a machine this thing is. But we're coming back up I-65, and we're running 75, 80 miles an hour, and a cold blast of air starts hitting us, and it was peculiar. Then another hour goes by, and all of a sudden, the sky is lighting up like fireworks. It's just huge lightning strikes in that, and we could see that there had apparently been heavy rain during the day, and I'm starting to get concerned because the weather is changing and changing fast, right?
Yes.
And I had a second concern. Little May here has shown me over time that she can fall asleep anywhere. She has already fallen asleep in front of the computer while operating the computer. She's already fallen asleep in the car in mid-conversation, in mid-word. I look over, her head is bobbled. Am I right, May? When you're tired, you fall asleep.
Right.
And I'm concerned about that on the back of the motorcycle. I don't want her falling off the motorcycle on the highway because she fell asleep. And so we worked out, and she's so soft-spoken, she can't talk to me because I can't hear her. So we worked out a little thing where, what were you doing to let me know you're still awake?
Touching you by your waist.
Kind of giving me a poke in the waist on each side. So, but somehow she forgot to do that, and so I'm getting more and more concerned that she's going to be falling asleep back there. I yelled back to her, what did she think of the lightning? And she says, she screamed, I didn't see any lightning. I said, oh boy, she's sleeping, because the sky was lit up. And then a few minutes later, you saw the lightning.
Yes, I definitely saw the lightning.
And didn't like it one bit.
Well, I like lightning, but I'd rather be in an enclosed place.
Yeah, because you were all of a sudden looking for trees, right?
Not trees, a house.
Something to duck behind. Anyhow, so we're cooking, and it's pitch dark, and the lightning is flashing, and the weather has definitely changed. And then all of a sudden, what did we hit?
Rain.
Rain. All of a sudden, the rain hits us and all that. And now May's really concerned. Plus, I've still got my concern about her falling asleep because she's also real thick-headed, and she doesn't want to admit that she can't take it. And if I'm going to make decisions, I need good information to work with. You got to tell me if you're running out of gas, Anyhow, at this point, I says, okay. First spot so we got to Remington, Indiana. I spotted the motel sign, and I said, that's it. Enough for one day. We're not going to make it in one day. I don't want to be a thickhead about this. And as it turned out, good night's sleep, and what a beautiful day today, huh?
Very gorgeous.
But admit it, you were afraid last night.
Tiny, tiny bit.
How much?
tiny, tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah, tiny. She was definitely. Anyhow, it was a wild night, and once again, something that would be probably nothing in a car, on a motorcycle, it becomes an adventure. Oh, a couple things real quick I want to mention. This machine, Suzuki GSX 1100G, what we went down to the rally for and everything. What an the guys are right. There's so many good things, but they say it right on that shirt. Big, fast, and smooth. It's an awesome machine. The power is awesome. That's what everybody mentioned is what they're addicted to is the power of this thing. But it's also a big 600-pound machine that's just, it's directionally stable. It's rock solid. And I cannot say enough good things about this hard bag. If you remember the show I put together about how to fabricate the mounts and everything for the hard bags, worked out perfectly. It's just excellent. I can't say enough good things about it. That was a very, very good project that I worked on. Anyway, time to get going and trying to get back to Chicago. What do you think?
I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go. That's the other thing. She's always ready to go, and she won't admit it when she's starting to get sleepy.
There was a McDonald's across the street, and I talked Bill into stopping for a snack before we got underway. It was already past noon, and I was a little hungry.
All right, we made a quick stop for Cokes and apple pie. And now let's see if I can figure out how to get us back to Chicago. There's the Sunset Inn across the street where we stayed. Glad to find it, believe me, in the storm at night. I-65 north. Boy, does this look different than it did last night. Last night, I got to admit, it was scary. With the lightning flashing across the sky and the pitch dark of night and the rain coming down. And it came down so quick and so fast, there was no chance to stop and get the gear on. Our time was better spent finding refuge. It was pretty cool, really.
They didn't have breakfast or lunch before leaving Remington. After all, it was past noon and they hadn't eaten yet today. But Bill always has reasons for doing things, and if you knew him, like we do, you'd know it's easier just to go along with him. They continued north on I-65. It was a beautiful day, and they learned in the McDonald's that fast-moving storms had gone through the area last night, including a couple of tornadoes. The decision to stop instead of soldiering on turned out to be a good one. They continued north on I-65 until Bill suddenly exited on 231. Mae wasn't sure why. He hadn't said anything, but he obviously had something in mind. He's kind of like that sometimes. He thinks it's cute, but it's not. Let's see what he had in mind.
Mae and I got off of I-65 when I spotted the Crown Point sign because a lot of people know that I cannot resist my favorite Ponderosa, and I actually sort of miss it because all the years, and it was many, many years, at least 15 years, we were on the air in northwest Indiana. Let me just maneuver here for a minute. Pay attention. There's that beautiful courthouse that I absolutely love in Crown Point. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've shown you pictures of it before. It's beautiful here. Crown Point is a really lovely little town. But anyway, when I spotted the Crown Point exit, I said, let's go to the Ponderosa. Like I say, I don't get a chance to do it anymore. I used to once a month drop tapes off in Maryville, which borders Crown Point. And of course, Indiana lost public access television. What a shame. By the way, folks, if you're interested in that sort of thing, don't think it's not possible to lose this wonderful resource called public access television. It's really important to have public support for it and outspoken public support. Indiana is a prime example of how, yes, you definitely can lose it. And they did. All of Indiana has lost any kind of form of meaningful public access. It's just a darn shame. We had a really good following down here. You wouldn't believe all the emails and calls that I get still, and it's been gone for about a year. All the emails and calls I get from people, where's the show? I can't find the show. And I'm sorry, it's not my fault. Just a shame. And it's really up to the public to show their support. So in any event, I miss stopping down here, and I think the reason I've had a number of people ask me how come Ponderosa is a Ponderosa, I suppose, but it's really not true. And I think maybe the reason in this case, because I've kind of gotten to know these people over the years, is that this is a man and a wife that put a great deal of personal effort into it. I know that all of these places, like Wendy's and McDonald's and Burger King and everything, they fly under the corporate banner, and I understand all that. But every once in a while, there's something you run into one that has a very strong personal touch, personal influence, and it shows in the decorations and the way they care for the grounds and the way the knickknacks in the restaurant and all that. I don't know, I just like it. For whatever reason, I like it. And I think the main reason is because I'm very finicky about certain things. I've never been here when it's been too cold, and I've never been there when it's been too hot. The temperature is always perfect. The music is never blaringly loud. It's always just about right. So for my taste, I really like it. So when I get a chance, I stop by, and it's very seldom now because, like I say, I don't come and drop tapes off in Maryville anymore. Kind of a shame. I miss it. There we are. Used to be a ton of these in Illinois. Never did figure out what happened to all of them. There used to be just a bunch of them, and now there's one in Aurora, and there's one in Waukegan, but very, very few, and there used to be so many. Interesting.
I was glad Bill stopped. I was hungry. The Cokes and apple pie at McDonald's were good, but didn't last very long. I was thinking Bill was going to try to ride straight through to get home. As it turns out, he was tired of the interstate and hungry, too. He didn't think I'd recognize where he was going because we hadn't approached this Ponderosa from the south before. He was kind of surprising me. He thinks it's cute. It isn't, but it's the way he is. Anyway, I was glad to get something substantial to eat before the final push home.
After leaving the Crown Point Ponderosa, they picked up Route 30 and headed west to 394 in Illinois, where they headed north to pick up I-294, the interstate that is sort of a bypass around Chicago. After heading north on I-294, For 40 minutes or so, they pulled into the Hinsdale Oasis. Bill thought it would be a perfect place to end the G-Men adventure.
We are reaching the conclusion of the trip, and as a matter of fact, I'm reminded of the words of my friend Doc Joe, the Toys for Tots doctor, when he said it comes to a time on a motorcycle trip where the trip is over. As wonderful as they've been, as much pleasure as we've had, time to go home. I think we're at that point now. Time to go home. We've had adventure, we've had beautiful weather, we've had rain, we had lightning, right?
Lightning, too.
Yeah, lightning too. You didn't like the lightning?
I liked it. Not that much.
Yeah, no, she didn't like it. Trust me, she didn't like lightning. Oh, question. First time on a motorcycle road trip.
Yes.
What'd you think?
I liked it.
Why do we do it? It'd be much easier to do this trip in a car, much easier. Why do guys like me and other guys that do motorcycle road trips, motorcycle touring, why do we do it on a motorcycle? Do you have any idea?
I can't speak for anyone else.
No, just speak for yourself.
I think it's because you get to experience the open air, the freshness, the naturalness, the everything that you don't feel in a car.
You're not insulated from anything.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. I wish I could explain it. I thought I knew because you're fresh to this that maybe you'd have a better insight than somebody like me that's, been on bikes all my life. I think you see more. And I know that sounds dopey because you can see just as much in a car, I guess. But I don't think you really see things like you do on a bike.
True, but also I forgot to say I think it's therapeutic.
In what way?
It lets you, I think, communicate with nature. It lets you have certain thoughts about things, about life that you've probably never thought about.
Time to think in a different way.
Yes, and in a car, I don't think you have that type of experience.
Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on. It's huge difference, though. It's huge. It's much different. The same trip in a car is totally different.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very difficult to explain, but like I say, those of us who do it really enjoy it. And I must give my disclaimers. I give every time with motorcycles because the last thing I want to do is to talk somebody into riding a motorcycle because something that I said on Motorsports Unlimited. Motorcycling is dangerous. You've all heard the story. I lost my little brother in a motorcycle accident many, many years ago, back in 1969. Motorcycling is dangerous. It's not for everyone. And you better make sure that the pleasure you get out of it offsets the risks that you take. It's probably not nearly as dangerous as some people think it is, but that doesn't mean there isn't risk involved because statistical evidence can't be ignored. There is risk involved, but for those that get out of it what I get out of it, it really is worth the effort. Although I got to say, Mae Chin, you are absolutely fearless. You just are absolutely fearless.
Thank you.
No, it's not something to be thankful for. I'm not sure it's a great thing. You don't seem to, until you met me, you didn't really know motorcycles or ride motorcycles. You don't seem to be afraid at all back there. Other than the lightning, I know.
But
no, I mean, you're absolutely...
Truman said fear is fear itself, I think. Is it
Okay.
Truman?
But I don't know, but you're not afraid then.
Well, not on the motorcycle.
On the motorcycle, I
but
mean, yeah.
I have other fears like going to the dentist.
No, that's not, I understand that. But I'm talking about on the motorcycle. I don't seem to, not one time did you ever tense up back there? Are you afraid of anything?
No, because I guess I put my trust in you.
Well, okay. Well, fair enough. I guess that's flattering. In any event, we're at the Hinsdale Oasis. I don't know if you can see the sign in the background. We're at the Hinsdale Oasis. This is going to conclude our trip for those watching this in other areas not familiar with the Chicago area. Chicago is bordered on one side by the lake, and on the east side and on the west side by lots of suburbs. Hinsdale is about halfway up the city if you're looking on a map. About right about the middle of Chicago. Just go west, and Hinsdale is one of the first suburbs going west of Chicago. And 294, the tollway system, the tri-state toll system that goes around, is sort of a bypass around Chicago. So we're right about in the center of Chicago, just to the west of it, and this will distribute. You can go east here and go any place in Chicago. A couple of things we want to wrap up. This motorcycle, of course, you don't have any experience with any other motorcycles, so you don't realize how good this one is, do you?
Well, I may have ridden one other one, but of course I was so young that I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't think it counts when you're 2 or 3 years old, no.
No.
Well, the bike, I'm telling you something. I should give you a little comparison because all the other road trips that I've taken you on, we've done it with my GS650G, also a Suzuki, which was a incredibly adequate bike. Talk about an overachiever. It really was. It did everything well, did everything it was supposed to do. On a couple of occasions, not on this trip, on a couple of the trips we've taken, the 650 would have had some benefit because it's so much lighter. It's 100 pounds lighter than this bike, and sometimes, like in the Lake of the Ozarks trip, sometimes down in those little tight areas trying to get into the marinas and everything, I'm not sure if I could have turned this thing around in some of the areas where I turned it around. On this trip, it was not an issue at all. On this trip, the 1100 was far superior in every way. When you get onto the interstate, particularly, the 650 is adequate. This thing is masterful. It is just an awesome piece. It's so far below, and you got to remember, all the other trips I've done have been by myself. This one was 2 up with full gear for everybody, so I was a lot more heavily loaded on this trip than I would have been. The machine just doesn't even know it's there, you know. So it was.
Wait.
What?
I don't weigh that much.
Well, no, but all the clothes and stuff you have to bring, it doubles what if it were just me, right?
Yes.
Yes. And of course, as I predicted at the beginning of this thing, the bathroom thing was going to be a real pain in the neck, and it was. Yeah, she's nodding.
1 or 2 times.
Or 9 times, yes.
No.
That's why we're here at the Oasis again. We've got to go a bathroom break. Come on, admit it.
No.
I'm only teasing. She wasn't bad, and she's fearless on the bike. She did not one time a complaint, not once, except the bathroom thing. That was whatever. Anyway, so the bike was flawless. It's awesome, and once again, I've said it before. You take a trip like this, and you can understand why there's such a thing as this GSX 1100G forum on the internet for people that are really enthusiastic about these bikes. Again, I also want to mention this project that I did, and I put that on the air before about the whole hard bag things. These are the J.C. Whitney trunks. These are also the trunks, but they're not used as trunks. They're used as side cases here. Just the best. It's just, I was a little surprised. I was a little concerned because these things are designed to be in this position, the trunk position, and all the weatherproofing and the weather sealing is designed for gravity to flow around it this way. And I said, maybe standing up, maybe I'm going to get a lot of leakage or something. We went through the rain, nothing, not a bit. I was actually surprised by that. So I'm real happy with this. This really, really worked well. Anything else I wanted to comment on it? Well, I'll do it in the studio if I do. Anyhow, did you have a good time? First time on a motorcycle road trip?
Had a great time.
You enjoyed it?
Yes, very much.
Okay, we're done. I guess we could say this is the road trip 2008. We could call this the what? Would we call it the Slade, Kentucky trip, or the Natural Bridge trip, or the GSX 1100G trip?
GSX 11.
GSX 11. G-Men, that's it. This was the G-Men road trip.
Of course, as our regular viewers know, Bill always has more to say. He wanted to follow up on a few things, starting with a comparison of the big G to the often referred to little g.
Of course, I'm always glad to stand next to my old friend, this 1982 Suzuki GS 650G. Now, I didn't say GSX, I said GS 650G. Those who have been watching Motorsports Unlimited for any length of time know that this thing has taken me on a number of road trips. Took me to upstate New York on a trip back to my boyhood home after a 50-year absence. And that's when I learned what just an incredible machine it is. It's a 650cc, 4-cylinder, 4-stroke. Talk about an overachiever. This is clearly an overachiever. It sort of surprises me a little bit. I had, as a young man, like most young men my age, I'm 65 years old now, and I was 14 in 1957 and through high school, 58, 59, 60, 61. Had BSAs and Triumphs and Nortons and, of course, Harleys and a number of DKWs, a number of other ones that are companies that are gone now and probably forgotten. But when I got this thing, I expected kind of the 650 performance of the BSA that I had. And it's really a surprising difference. This thing is a high RPM engine. It's a double overhead cam engine, but only 2 valves per cylinder. A lot of people probably don't realize anymore, I guess time's gone by, that at one time Suzuki was strictly a 2-stroke company. Suzuki and Yamaha were all 2-strokes. Honda was a 4-stroke company. Kawasaki was originally a 2-stroke company, and Suzuki didn't come into the 4-stroke thing for a long time. And this engine design was their first, I don't want to say their first, somebody will make a liar out of me, but as far as a major market, American marketplace thing, this engine design was their first foray into 4-stroke motorcycles, and they really hit a home run with it. This thing was made, and I should have looked all this up first because I don't remember it verbatim, but it was made in a number of sizes. This one happens to be a 650. They made it in a 750, an 850, 1,000, and some people say they had an 1100 version of it also, of this 2-valve double overhead cam 4-cylinder engine. A remarkable, even Cooch, our old friend from the Toys for Tots president, or former president of the Toys for Tots organization, he had an 850 version of this, said it was the best motorcycle he ever had, and sorry he got rid of it. He has got like 14 motorcycles and he had to get rid of something, so it had to go. But in any event, mine is the 650. That was the smallest version of this that they ever created. And what a remarkable performance. This thing will rev to 10,000 RPM. It'll run along the highway. And that's really I want to compare these two machines so you get an idea what I'm talking about. This one, running along the highway, it's very comfortable at 60, 65 miles an hour. No problem at all. If you start running up to 70, 75, it'll do it. No problem. But you become aware that you're kind of wringing its neck to get it to do it. The RPM is up around 7,000 RPM. It'll do it, and it'll seem to do it forever because it's taken me all over the country. It seems to do it forever, but you're always kind of conscious of it, like it's really working hard at it. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. Of course, on this one, this is the GSX 1100G, the 1993, and we've talked about this one on the program many, many times. This is a more modern engine design, and what happened when I got back from New York with this thing, I liked it so much, I said, let me find out what the most kick-butt version of this is. This was the first time I had a shaft drive motorcycle, and I absolutely loved it. No maintenance, never thought about it. I said, let me find out what the most kick-butt version of something like this is. And as it turns out, it's the Suzuki GS 1100G that was made from 91 to 93. What an awesome performer. This is a 4-valve per cylinder engine, also double overhead cam. And when you run along the highway with this one, you can run along at 75, 80 miles an hour. Effortless. It's at 70 miles or 72, 73. It's about 5,000 RPM. I shouldn't say this, you can cruise at triple-digit speeds, and it doesn't even think about it. It's just an awesome performer. Whereas this one at interstate speeds, you know it's working. This one is just loafing, just absolutely loafing no matter what you do with it. Awesome performer. By the way, something I want to mention here that I was a little bit surprised about. You know, we used to have the girls, our motorsport girls, on every program with us, 3 or 4, 5 girls sometimes. And I always liked it when we did it that way. One of the things they did, one of the contributions they make was they asked the very best questions because for some reason, girls don't seem to have like huge egos like males do about these things where we're not as expressive about it. We don't want to let anybody know we don't know something. It doesn't seem to bother girls. They ask the best questions and it helps us answer. And I was talking to Mae about the shaft drive and all that, and I could kind of see a blank look in her face. It never occurred to me that somebody wouldn't know what that meant, shaft drive. And by her making me aware that somebody didn't know, I asked a few other people, they didn't know either. So it's wonderful when the girls ask these questions, it gives us a chance to explain. Most motorcycles are chain drive motorcycles. There are a few that are belt drive. In the early days, my Wizard motorbike had a V-belt drive, and the more modern Kevlar belts today have a tooth belt drive. It has advantages and disadvantages just like every other kind of drive system. In any event, what the drive we're talking about is somehow you've got to turn the rear wheel. Up here in the engine, we've got the crankshaft, and it's turning this way. And it's turning the transmission and the clutch, and it's turning everything this way. And we've got to turn the rear wheel this way also. Normally you would put a sprocket up here and a sprocket back here, and you'd have a chain, and the engine would turn the rear wheel by the chain. That's a chain drive. Now in this case, it doesn't have a chain. It's got a shaft and a ring and pinion gear back in here, very much like an automobile would have. The advantage on this is absolutely maintenance free. You just don't touch it. When I change oil, I change the differential. It's not a differential. Ring and gear, pinion gear fluid, I change it too, and I'm speaking as fast as I can because we're fighting rainstorms here today, folks. I'm trying to get this done. But in any event, it's just when I change oil, I change the fluid back here also, and the rest of the time I never think of it. How about disadvantages? Every engineer will tell you that when you change direction of the power, everything is turning in this direction up here, the engine, trans, everything. But now the shaft has got to turn in this direction. So we've got to turn the power coming out of the engine, come back to the rear wheel, and now the shaft is turning this way, but we got to turn the rear wheel this way. So now again, we've got a ring and pinion gear to turn the power back the other way. Anytime you change direction of the power, you consume power. It uses up power. Now, I've never driven a 650 version of this, which they had chain drive, to see if I could feel any difference in power. The thing performs beautifully just the way it is, but I'm sure that there's a loss of power. On the other hand, on this machine, same thing. It's a shaft drive bike, maintenance free. It's got the ring and pinion, the differential, or not differential, ring and pinion gear in the case and all that. On this one, but this thing is so powerful, it just doesn't make any difference. There's nothing can really slow this thing down. However, let me say this. There are other issues involved. Road racers, for example, would never use a shaft drive. It does, I'm going to use the word, some peculiar handling characteristics because of the torque reaction. When you grab a handful of throttle, the way it changes the power and goes back to the rear wheel. If the shaft were on the other side, the machine would have a tendency to lift the front wheel when you gas it up. Because it's on this side, it has a tendency to want to push the front wheel down a little bit. I don't really notice it. This one is a lot more powerful. Sometimes at 70, 80 miles an hour on a highway, you grab a handful of the thing. I like what it does. If I feel in any way, if I'm rounding a corner or something like that at speed, and I'm not comfortable with the handling, and I don't want, it's not a big thing, it's a tiny thing, I'll just screw the power on a little bit, and it really plants the bike. So I like it. But for a road racer, they don't want any of those issues involved in it. A road racer that's going to be right at the limit at every corner, he wants a chain drive with that linear feel and all that. Belt drive has the advantage of the chain drive without the disadvantage of the chain drive. In other words, it's got maintenance free, because it's a belt. On the other hand, it has its own little share of issues about debris getting in there and all that. So there's no perfect answer, but for touring riding, which is basically what I'm doing now at my age, for touring riding, the shaft drive is just absolutely the best. And I hope it's clear what a shaft drive is now. There's no chain drive in a rear wheel. It's all a matter of universal joints and shafts and all that, okay? So I wanted to compare the two bikes. 650, 4-cylinder, 4-stroke, double overhead cam, but only 2 valves per cylinder. 1100 cc, 4 valves per cylinder, 4-cylinder, awesomely fast bike. This thing, they said it on their shirts just right. They really did. Big, fast, and smooth. These things really are extremely powerful machines. And I don't care what speed you're out on the highway. It is well within its limitations. This one, you know, it's straining itself a bit at interstate speeds. This one, it's nothing. It's never really challenged at any speed that I've run the thing at. In any event, the raindrops are coming down a little harder now. I just wanted to give that little bit of a comparison. I wouldn't get rid of this. This is like an old friend now, and it's still nice to take it out now and then. I tell you what I do like. It's 100 pounds lighter than this. This thing is 600 pounds. This thing is 500 pounds. It's very noticeable if you get down some kind of a picturesque area where you get down to some difficult thing, you can't turn it around. This thing is very easy to turn around. This is a real chore. So sometimes this one has an advantage, but when you get out onto the highway, this thing just is absolutely the answer. Anyhow, raindrops are coming down harder now, and I've got some other things that I want to explain. I'm going as fast as I can, though, folks, I promise.
A couple of weeks after returning from the G-Men rally, the numbers came in. Total attendance, 49 G-Men and friends, 21 GSX 1100G motorcycles. Other lesser bikes attending, 24. Bikes trailered or trucked, 0. First-time rally attendees, 15. States represented, 15. 3 countries represented, USA, Canada, and Singapore. Longest distance ridden to attend the rally, 2,000 miles. There were also 5 female riders listed as attending, but Bill and Mae didn't see any females riding a big G, so they must have been among the riders on lesser machines. Bill also wanted to follow up on the results of his first test of the hard bag setup he built.
All right, just a quick little follow-up here on the hard bags, because we've talked about this a lot throughout the course of the program. It's just turned out to be an excellent project. But the one thing I'm really congratulating myself about, I spent a fair amount of extra time. If you remember the show, and I don't want to go through the whole thing again about how you build the brackets and everything to use the trunk as a side case, you need a way of mounting these plates, and you have to fabricate bracketry and all that, which I did. However, the first time I made them, it was done in such a way that in order to get them on and off, I had to take the seat off and the fiberglass off and all that. I didn't like that one bit. So I spent some extra time, a fair amount of extra time, coming up with a way of making it so that I didn't have to remove anything to get these brackets off. And I can tell you, the proof is in the pudding right now. You've seen the piece that we just shot, and this bracket wasn't on, because I can tell you how I am. If it's too darn hard to get on and off, when I come home, the side bags are coming off, and the brackets are going to sit there the rest of the summer. But it's so easy to get them on and off without taking anything else that it's well worth doing. Here's what I mean, real quick. Now, I took a couple of actually, I've just put it back on for this purpose here because we're out of time. And I just want to show you quickly that you don't have to remove anything, and that's what I wanted to do. You don't have to remove anything here. I've got one bolt down here, and this bracket had to be extended down, but nobody can see it, so it's not an obvious thing. So we've got one bracket here. I'm going to put the mic down. And that's all there is to it. And the proof is in the pudding. When I got home the next day, I took the bags off that night. The next day I went out, and in a couple of minutes I had the brackets off and laying on the side. And the only time you need them is when you're going to put the bags on. The motorcycle looks a whole lot cleaner without these things hanging off the side. So if you do what I did, if you follow that little instructional DVD that I made, make sure you spend the extra time so that you can get these plates, brackets, whatever you want to call them, on and off without taking anything else off.
Bill also wanted to comment on how his back handled the trip. Our regular viewers will recall he wanted to tape a motorcycle road trip last year, but back surgery in May and continuing back problems during the summer prevented it.
Of course, as we mentioned before, another purpose of this trip was really to test my back. You all know that I've had back problems for the past few years and had back surgery last May of what would it be? 2007. May of 2007. Prevented a motorcycle road trip last year. This was a test. My back was sore, but not excruciatingly pain sore. But sore, I knew about it. And I wanted to see how it would be a few days after I got back. Well, it was sore for a couple of days. Not something I couldn't deal with. Definitely sore, but I could do it. And I was so happy about that I could do it because I so enjoy these motorcycle road trips. The other thing I also want to mention, and I want to go real quick here because I would love to get just a little bit more of that 421 in Kentucky in here just to show you how pretty that ride was in there. It was so nice. Hopefully I can save just a little space for it. Anyhow, very quickly, this trip was an example. This was a G rally, but when the first show aired, already I got emails from people. One fellow in particular has got a Kawasaki Vulcan, and they just had a big rally in Western Kentucky. This is not an unusual occurrence, what we've just shown you these past 4 years, 4 weeks, I'm sorry, these past 4 programs, maybe I should say it that way, these past 4 programs. This is very common in the motorsport community of picking a central location in the country and have a meeting place, and people come from all over the country. They do it all the time with rod runs, traditional American street rods, and all kinds of vehicles and motorcycles and all the rest of it. It's a great deal of fun. It really is. It's something you ought to consider for your club or what have you. It was a great joy. Now, very quickly, let's see if I can get just a little bit of that 421 in Kentucky. I highly recommend that stretch of road. Hey, one more thing I wanted to mention about the comparison of the 650, the GS 650G and the GSX 1100G. Wanted to mention it during the comparison, but I forgot, so I'll mention it now. Fuel mileage. The smaller bike, the GS 650G, consistently between 51 and 54 miles to the gallon. The big guy, the 1100, best of 42 miles to the gallon, drops down to about 40 miles to the gallon, depending on how fast I'm running it and all that. So between 40 and 42 miles to the gallon for the big one, and 51 to 54 miles per gallon for the 650.
Finally, Bill wanted to comment on the experience of having a passenger on a motorcycle road trip. As you know, he normally does these things himself, but Mae really wanted to go, so he decided to give it a try. What do you think he's going to say?
I suppose one of the things that I really have to talk about a little bit, because we've talked about it so much on Motorsports Unlimited, is how it worked out with a passenger. As you know, all the other motorcycle road trips that we've done, I've done by myself. When I went to upstate New York, when I went out to Kansas, when we did the Ohio trip and all that, and I actually enjoy riding by myself. Plus the fact, as I've explained so many times, I'm sure you're tired of hearing it, it is really a pain in the neck for other people when we're taping these things, because there's so much fooling around with the taping and checking the footage and the audio and blah, 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 and all that, that people don't think it's nothing until they get started with it, and they realize that, you can spend an hour or two and only ride for 5 minutes because we're doing so much of this other stuff. So Mae really wanted to go on a trip, and I thought it'd be nice to try it. And I also had the advantage of, with the 650 doesn't, I'm sure it can do it. But it really, with me and a full load of baggage on it and everything like that, and at highway speeds, it's working already. I took the red bike, or the black bike, for the first trip, obviously because I didn't even know about these bikes at that time. And I acquired this when I got back from it. But then the next trip, I took the black one again to Kansas. And the next trip to Ohio, I used the black one again because I didn't have the saddlebags and the tail pack and all that for this. And then regular viewers know that I did that program about using the J.C. Whitney trunks as side bags and fabricating the brackets and all of that stuff. Anyway, I don't want to. Again, I'm fighting the raindrops here, and I'm trying to get this done without too much explanation. But those that saw the show know that I built all this stuff just so that I could use it for touring. Use the red bike for the next trip, and of course, taking a passenger, it does take more power because you do have another person on board and all of their gear and everything too. So the question is, how did it work out? Well, on balance, I think it was a plus. There were minuses. For one thing, when you've got somebody else with you, you really do have to consider them. I mean, I teased a lot about Mae with the bathroom thing and all that stuff. It really wasn't bad. I was kind of trying to make it funny. But the fact is, you do have to be conscious of the other person. You have to know if they're hungry or not hungry or blah, blah, blah and all that. And how long you've been riding, how long you've been in the saddle. Whereas when I'm by myself, the only thing I'm focused on and concentrating on is what the next piece I'm going to shoot and all that. For example, the piece with Daryl the farmer, I really kicked myself for not having gotten that on the air. He was such a terrific guy. But in my mind, I was thinking about how long it had been, and Mae is standing in the sun and it's like 90 degrees and all that. And you start being considerate of other folks. And in that sense, it does sort of interfere with what you have to do a little bit. But on the plus side, it's really nice to have some company. It's nice to have somebody with you because you're running along the highway for hours and hours. It's nice to call somebody and say, hey, look at that, or hey, look at this. And that's really nice. But that kind of balances things out. It came out in my own mind, after I figured it all out, it's a plus. And I want to explain why. Mae, come on in here, please. She's off camera right now, timing these pieces and all that. Come on in here, little Mae. You did pretty good on your first motorcycle road trip, right?
Yes, I did.
And you enjoyed it?
A lot.
Except for scaring me with the falling asleep stuff.
Yes.
Yes, you got to really warn me when you're doing that, because if you fall asleep on a bike, you can topple off.
I agree.
Yeah, that would be a bad thing.
I guess so.
Yeah, it sure would. Anyhow, what was the thing that kind of tipped the balance in favor of it's more fun with a passenger? What was the best thing?
What was the best thing?
The best thing about having a passenger. I already explained what the minuses were. Now, what was the best thing about having a passenger?
The unsprung and sprung weight.
Yes, that's exactly right. Now, the audience that somebody that hasn't watched the show all the time, we've already done a little explanation about this, but I don't want to get too deep into it because, again, we're out of time, but I want you to understand what I'm talking about. The ride of a motorcycle or a car is really determined by its sprung to unsprung weight ratio. It's very, very important. You've heard the old rumors about a heavy car rides better and all that. Well, it's actually true, but it's not true because it's heavy. It's true because it has a heavy car has a better sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Assuming the wheels and the tires and all the parts that are stuck on the ground are the same weight, and you just add weight to the car, you end up with a better ride because you have a better sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Believe me, if you just made the car heavy, for example, if you made each wheel on the car 500 pounds, I'll guarantee you the thing rides like a brick. You didn't get anything. Just because the car is heavier doesn't mean it rode better. It's the sprung to unsprung weight ratio is important. Now, what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is when you look at the motorcycle, and hopefully right now I'm going to have a video shot of me on the bike pushing the thing up and down, pushing the suspension up and down. The part that's not sprung is the wheel and tire. That's stuck to the ground. That's not sitting on springs. A piece of the swing arm is sprung, and a piece of it is not sprung. The axle isn't sprung. That's also stuck with the wheel. So the sprung to unsprung weight ratio would be the weight of the tire and wheel, and here's that minus side of that shaft drive bike. The shaft drive is much heavier than the chain drive, and so you do give up ride, and that would normally really bother me, except the trade-off is, on balance, it is so nice having that maintenance free, and for what I do, anyhow, it works fine. But, so what am I saying? What was the advantage of having Mae with me? Well, when we put Mae on the bike with me, and Mae, if you would, let's see if we can do this. I want you to walk around the other side of the bike. If you would, come on over here. Can you get up here at all? Can you swing your leg over it, or it's going to be too awkward? Can you do it? Can you do it? I should have practiced this, right? Go ahead, swing right up on the bike. Right up on the bike. Now, Mae isn't very heavy, but she weighs about 100 pounds. And now go ahead and slide back on it. Slide back on the seat. Slide all the way back. When you add her to the machine, and again, hopefully I'm going to show you a picture of this right now, with her and I on the machine, we have improved the sprung to unsprung weight ratio of the machine. And believe me, I feel this. This is an advantage to me when I'm by myself on the machine, even with the full gear, even with the bags and all that. When I add her to the bike, the ride is better because we have altered the sprung to unsprung weight ratio. You can look at the camera, Mae. Go ahead, all the way, look at the camera. So, on balance, I think it was better with Mae along because of the more favorable sprung to unsprung weight ratio.
Better sprung to unsprung weight ratio? If she doesn't bop him, I will. But not this week because we're out of time with only enough left to acknowledge the fine work of our award-winning production team, including Tom McGrady, Art Lauschat, our webmaster, Frank Barbalace, and Sue Casanda. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by independent artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Janine Lauschat, Mae Chin, our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Samantha Bentley, hoping you enjoyed accompanying Bill and Mae on their adventure to Eastern Kentucky. Janine and I sure did. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, President of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. This program made possible in part by support from PB Food Products, located on 47th Street at Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, it's the annual Green Ribbon Motorcycle Run held to raise funds for the Guild. That's the Gastrointestinal Liver Disease Council at the University of Illinois Medical Center doing some incredibly important work from which we all benefit. Hey, Bill, you said motorcycle run, but I see cars. Yep, every year this event has grown, and this year a car show has been added. Join us next week on Motorsports Unlimited and check it out.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.